I like to use a pronated grip because then that's going to kind of twist your shoulder in its socket, the glenohumeral joint, and it's going to more preferentially target the rear deltoid head since it's facing that line of contraction with gravity. I'm beginning this workout off with an external rotation exercise. So any movement where you're going like this with the arm is going to be external rotation. Then the other way would be internal rotation. But I'm starting off with external rotation because it's very undertrained in most shoulder movements. Most shoulder movements are just working on flexion or abduction. So just bringing the arm up or up like this, or extension where you're like this, so to just really train all three heads. And while external rotation doesn't really add much to hypertrophy, it's just a great way to train the rotator cuff musculature without much else. And it's a great way to ensure that you may not get injured, to reduce that injury probability and keep your shoulders healthy and strong. And I did it this way with my elbow on my knee to reinforce stability. If I were just standing with the dumbbells like this, I'm gonna get tired, I'm gonna end up falling. This is more of a warm-up drill rather than anything else, so it's not intended to overly fatigue you or mess you up for the rest of the workout. It's just in order to keep things trucking along, just help your healthiness wise and not, injure yourself later on in the workout. We really do not want that. I like to categorize hypertrophy into 3 pillars to really encapsulate what it means to get the most out of your hypertrophy training. And first of all, you want a great base, so a great sense of stability. Whenever you are pressing or pulling or whatever you're doing from a stable base, you're automatically going to be much stronger and more powerful, because an unstable object is a weak object. Additionally, I love to get a full range of motion, so whatever the joint will allow, take it through its paces. Whatever your mobility can do, take it through its paces. And ideally, you want to really emphasize the lengthened portion or the most stretched out portion of a muscle if you can. And then lastly, you really want to be providing constant tension. So whatever you have to do in order to provide constant tension, I think that you should be doing that as well. This exercise really checks off all 3. You're really grounded. You really have a strong base because you're in a seat, you have back support, so you're pressing from a stable starting point. And then additionally, you have constant tension, since there's never a point in this range of motion where you're not having any tension unless you're just holding it with your limbs stacked to the top. But just don't do that and you'll be totally golden. And additionally, you're getting a little bit of a stretch at the bottom. It's not as good as it probably could be, but this is the best option that you have for dumbbells. And that's why I am choosing this variation. And then you'll notice that I kind of have a little slight incline in the seat, and that's just because it's more comfortable for me to press from this angle instead of being totally upright. It takes a little bit of stress off of the shoulders. Although if you are more upright, that's going to be kind of shifting the emphasis a little bit more to the side delt. So pick your poison, whatever you want to be doing. Additionally, I'm staying away from any unilateral pressing movement or any standing pressing movement. First of all, if you're going to be standing, then you're going to have your core as potentially limiting factor. Then you'll probably be tempted to use more leg drive. And since this is about hypertrophy, I think that really trying to isolate the muscle is going to be the best route to go forward with. And then along those lines, if you are doing the exercise unilaterally, so by using one arm at a time and taking away the other arm, then that's also going to be using your core to a very large degree, and you're going to have to fight it fight from tipping over because of the weights and use your core as a counterbalance, which could also get into the way of your hypertrophy training. The posterior deltoids, so the ones all the way back here that are kind of hard to see, are often neglected just for that fact. People can't see them as much, and on most of your rows and pull downs, you're actually going to be working them a lot too. But it's still nice to emphasize those, since unlike pressing exercises where they're working the front delts and spades, pulling exercises are only working the rear delts to a much smaller degree. So isolating them can be kind of what you need to send them into that next level zone that you may want them to appear at. Now, with this unilateral prone version, dumbbell version of a rear delt fly, I really like it because you have that sense of stability. You're very locked into place, but you can also just work on one rear delt at a single time. The variation where you're bent over, where your hip is hinged back and then you're doing a fly, is also a great variation. But then your core and your low back, your erector spinae muscles may fatigue before your rear delts do. That is a very real possibility, especially if you've been hammering that side of the body or that area of the body for a very long time. Like a lot of people, they love to throw the rear delt exercises at the end of their back day workouts. But if their erector spinae muscles are super fatigued, then they may not be able to take them to true failure at the very end of their workouts. So that's why I like a variation like this, where your core and your erector spinae and all that jazz is not being activated at all, so you can just focus on your rear delts. Additionally, I like to use a pronated grip, because then that's going to kind of twist your shoulder in its socket, the glenohumeral joint, and it's going to more preferentially target the rear deltoid head, since it's facing that line of contraction with gravity. Last but not least, we come to one of the most important exercises in our arsenal for shoulders, and that is lateral raises. And the reason why I say that's one of the most important exercises is because of what I said earlier, which harkens back to how pushing exercises, anything where you're going to be using your chest and triceps, is pretty much always going to be using your front deltoid as well, so we're already hitting that very well. Any pulling exercises plus our rear delt fly, it's going to be targeting the rear deltoids to quite a large extent, but we're really not hitting our lateral head of the deltoids, this middle portion, that well on anything except for maybe the seated dumbbell press. That one's going to be working, but that again is almost entirely front delt as well, because it is a pressing exercise, and just because of the line of pull or push. Like for instance, if you externally rotate your arm, look what happens to your side deltoid. It flips back. So then the line of contraction here, so we're mainly working that anterior portion of the deltoid. The lateral raises are of the utmost importance, and I think that a more scientific, science-based variation would be the variation where you're actually lying sideways on an inclined bench press, so that you kind of have more of a stretch and more of constant tension the whole time. But since we just did a unilateral lift with the the rear delt exercise, and then we already did a pressing exercise, I thought it would be fitting to just stick with the basics and just do a bilateral, lateral raise. And that exercise is just tried and true. It's a classic for a reason. And sometimes you still got to stick to the basics, even though something may be better on paper. So if you guys want to try something that may be a little bit more scientific according to my 3 pillars on paper, then definitely give the other exercise a go. But I opted for the bilateral seated lateral raise, and you could totally do it standing as well, but then again, you do get more of stability when you're seated. And if you want to take it a step further for this lift, maybe include a back support as well. Then a little tidbit in terms of form: try and really key into that lateral deltoid head. Try not to do any scapulae elevation, because that's me working, kind of shifting the emphasis more to the upper traps, and we're trying to just work on the deltoid head. So just work on abduction of the shoulder, just like this, and you'll be working it in spades. And additionally, by rotating your wrist up a little bit, that's going to be kind of giving it more of a line of contraction in accordance to gravity, and that'll also help target it as well. But anyways, guys, if you do all these exercises or even variations of the exercises, you're going to have a complete, really emphasized and hypertrophic shoulder day, and you really can't beat it. I mean, you could change things up a little bit. You could kind of change some things here and there, or kind of, rotate the exercises a bit, or change the ordering depending on your goals and your likelihood. But as long as you're kind of following those principles, then you're going to be golden in terms of shoulder development. So anyway, thank you for watching. Have a good one.